Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Griffin here in Washington, D.C. Now, just within the last few hours, the double-talking, forked-tongue Secretary General of NATO, Anders Fogh Rasmussen, has chided Russia for making this threat. And, of course, NATO's intentions are all sweetness and light. Yes, but military planners don't look at intentions. You got to look at capabilities, because the intentions can change, but the capabilities, once there they are. So Fogh Rasmussen in Berlin has had talks with Merkel and says these statements by Russia are unjustified. Quote from Fogh Rasmussen, "Our missile defense system is not technically designed to threaten Russia in any way, and we have provided that information to Russia. Politically, we don't have any intention to attack Russia." This is the same guy who at one point said, "We have no intention of bombing Libya," and then within a couple of weeks, he was a fire-breathing attack dog, warmonger, mad bomber. So that can all change. The Russians are correct. The missile defense system in question, the NATO-US ABM, is going to be in 4 phases. It will be completed by 2020. Interceptor missiles will be based in Poland and Romania, even though the target is supposed to be Iran, right? Well, wouldn't you put the missiles in Turkey or something like that, or someplace else? No, has to be Poland and Romania. Who are they kidding? And the idea, of course, is that makes this so dangerous is it's part of a first strike sneak attack strategy. This kind of thing that Bobby Kennedy said the U.S. didn't want to do. 20 years after Pearl Harbor, he said, no, we don't want to do that. Now, 50 years after that, the U.S. is eagerly preparing for a sneak attack potential at any rate. So the NATO meeting is Chicago, May 20th to the 21st. And that's when the first phase of the SHIELD, so-called, is going to be declared up and running. So that is all quite real. Now, let's, however, look also at the destabilizations that are going on. You have basically 2 prongs. Let's just mention the first one briefly. The context for this is we had the Delhi summit, the New Delhi summit, and we had the project of the BRICS Bank approved and given to the finance ministers and other export banks and other entities. We had the clear political will to get out from under the dollar system, stop letting London and Wall Street skim off the top, get those invisible earnings, keep them in the BRICS or Shanghai Cooperation Organization realm. At that time, I warned you, go back to 1975, the Colombo Conference of the Non-Aligned Group, who came out for a new world economic order. They wanted technology transfer, debt forgiveness, world economic development, full technology, modern science, technology, industry, engineering. And the answer to that was a series of destabilizations, assassinations, Indira Gandhi assassinated, Mrs. Bandaranaike thrown out, and so forth. We discussed this in past weeks. So now we predicted we're getting the backlash, right? The counter attack of NATO is here. And it takes two prongs, right? One is not focused on here in the United States, although it's big in Europe, right? It's very interesting, the division of labor on this. In the case of Europe, we're supposed to get in an uproar about the gas princess. Tymoshenko, the kleptocrat, the friend of NATO. The gas princess, of course, was the beneficiary of the November 2004 Orange Revolution, the color revolution in Ukraine that brought down the guy who had won the election, who was Yanukovych, and installed these 2 NATO puppets, Yushchenko and Tymoshenko. Right? Yushchenko was the president, and Tymoshenko was the prime minister, and she was already legendary for her corruption. This is a kleptocrat of international proportions. Right? Someday we may have a contest, a ranking of the kleptocrats of the past decade, certainly she is a contender. But now, all of a sudden, we're told that the fate of democracy in Ukraine and in Europe stands or falls according to the treatment of this parasitical oligarch, Tymoshenko. And unfortunately, it's not just the usual NATO relay stations that are putting this out, but Moscow is also sympathetic to Tymoshenko. It's partly this. Moscow is trying to defend the 2009 treaty that Tymoshenko signed that finally began to put an end to this constant role of Ukraine as a provocateur, cutting off the gas, because that was their specialty. In order to extort concessions from Russia and from Europe, since Ukraine was right there in the middle and could turn off the gas, they did. And this was Tymoshenko doing this, the prime minister. So Putin, in the last phase of Tymoshenko, when she was very, very weak, when she was about to be voted out of power, right, when she had alienated and antagonized all sorts of people, Putin went there. Remember the famous scene? Putin met with Tymoshenko, and she signed a deal which finally put a reasonable basis on these gas transit accords. So I can understand Russia trying to defend those accords. The problem is they think that they have to defend Tymoshenko. I guess the idea is that if she's found to be a criminal on these deals, then the deals themselves may be subject to renegotiation or something like this. I think it's understandable, maybe short-sighted, maybe not. But remember, the whole point of the Nord Stream or Nord Stream pipeline is to get around these virulently anti-Russian or anti-communist Eastern European states that have emerged. So in Germany, this is a big theme, right? Oh, Tymoshenko. And the form that it takes is that we're going to have an earth-shaking event, the European Soccer Championship. The European Soccer Championship is coming in Kiev. It's actually between Poland and Ukraine, I think, in June. And obviously, what Tymoshenko has done, and maybe people can send in the details, Tymoshenko has obviously got, or somebody has gotten for her, a good public relations firm, you know? Somebody in the same league as Hill and Knowlton or somebody like this. I'm just guessing. I don't know. And they have put this stuff out, and they got pictures of her where she shows these bruises. I don't know how she got the bruises, but this now becomes a life and death issue for human rights. So look at the people that are declaring that if Tymoshenko is not immediately released, they won't go to the European Soccer Championship. That would be Merkel. That would be Barroso. We know him from the European Commission, and Hillary and others. Lots of people in Europe, right? All kinds of NATO governments. There's also supposed to be a Central and Eastern European summit in Yalta in May, which some of these countries was supposed to be attending. Now they say, oh, we won't go, and that menaces to be a complete flop. So this is what's going on. I would say this is irrelevant. What this shows is the incompetence of Merkel, right? This stubborn incompetence, maybe because she was a communist, she was in the DDR, right? She was a member of some kind of party organization, right? Whatever it was, the Young Pioneers. She feels that she's got to sacrifice German interests to do this stuff. The obvious interest of Germany is to regard Ukraine as one of the most critical partners that there are. For export, you've got to have good relations with Ukraine. And Merkel then opens her yap and starts blabbing about human rights. And I wonder whether somebody from the Ruhr or someplace like this is going to call her up and say, get a hold of yourself there, Merkel. We need export. Stop sabotaging our commercial future. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, Webster Tarpley in Washington, D.C. So, Merkel is eagerly sacrificing German export interests and the possibility of a really significant economic partnership to pander to this hysteria, right, to the obviously pre-planned campaign of the NATO bloc and its stooges against well, against everybody else, right, to stir the pot, right, to put this on the agenda, right? Instead of discussing world economic development in the 21st century, we had to discuss the fate of Tymoshenko. Well, sorry. And now here's the other one. The dissident Chen of China. Chen, the so-called blind lawyer, is an activist in China different from some of the others. He's not an intellectual. He's not a theoretician or anything. His issue is forced abortion and the one-child per family policy imposed by the Communist Party. Now, these are odious policies, but they have been there for quite a while, so we want to know why him, why now, and who's doing what to whom. Now, in the case of Chen, we see a carefully organized operation, to be sure, designed to maximum the impact, this time in the United States. My impression, just looking at some websites this week, is that Europe is concentrating on Tymoshenko, whereas the U.S. is concentrating on Chen. In the case of Tymoshenko, the goal is to overthrow Yanukovych and put in a new orange color revolution NATO puppet regime, perhaps headed by Tymoshenko, right? Give her a new lease on life, right? You lose Sarkozy, you try to get Tymoshenko, if that's what it's going to be. So this was all planned. We're told that Chen, the blind lawyer, so concerned about forced abortion and the one child per family, he was being held in house arrest. And somehow, even though he's blind, he's able to climb over a wall, travel many, many miles, get to Beijing, and obviously with the help of a seamless support network that he was able to do this. It's claimed that some of that support network has now been rounded up by the Chinese authorities. And then we've got scenes like Chen being able to call in to a meeting of a gaggle of reactionary Republicans in the House, led by, I think, it doesn't matter who, but a rump session of a congressional committee, normally not in session, but they convened a special session to be able to hear the golden words of Chen, and he's apparently also been on the phone with the State Department and so forth. The ringmaster for this thing is a guy called Bob Fu. Bob Fu of the China Aid Association. He says that he's from the same hood. He's from Shantung, as is Chen. So we then get U.S. Ambassador Gary Locke going to get Chen, bringing him to the U.S. Embassy. They stay there, and then Chen says he wants to leave. And it seems to me quite obvious. They say, don't leave. Stay here. Not good, we can't guarantee what happens to you when you leave these premises. Chen insists on getting up and storming out. They take him where he wants to go, and of course the Chinese government agents then begin to swarm around him. And then Chen calls back and says, I got to reconsider, got to change my mind. I want to go to the U.S. Now, the reactionaries are all over this. And it's obviously some way they can begin to attack Obama's foreign policy, which they did not have. So what I'm wondering about is, of course, who the U.S. ambassador in China was for quite a while. Huntsman the Mormon, Huntsman, a member of that interlocking block of super rich parasitical families, the Huntsmans, the Romneys, the Marriotts, and others, this block. Huntsman, as we recall, was the left-wing man of the Romney campaign. Ron Paul, right-wing man, Huntsman, left-wing man, using billions that he has from his father, the head of Huntsman Industries. So the result of all this is a big affair. Now, it also fits in, right? The U.S. attention turning to China. The need to start an anti-Chinese campaign is also implicit in the air-sea battle document, the new Pentagon strategy. Remember, in December, January, Obama was saying, we're done with the Middle East for a while. We've done as much as we can do there. They've destroyed as many countries as they think they can in the short run, although that's not a guarantee for Syria either, or Iran. They want to shift their attention to East Asia, out of Southwest Asia towards East Asia, and therefore, well, you need popular hostility against China, and there hasn't been a lot of that, so they've got to get going. Therefore, I would urge people, look at this character, Bob Fu. He did an op-ed in the Washington Post. He seems to be orchestrating this on the scene, right? He's over there. How he does that is always an interesting question. And isn't there a public relations firm here in the background? Because this is the overwhelming impression. Same thing, by the way, with Tymoshenko, right? When she comes out with these pictures, and the pictures immediately appear in newspapers around Europe, then I think that's also very suspicious. Let's also look back. How did this all start, right? The murder of, alleged murder, death certainly, of Neil Haywood of Hakluyt, Hakluyt. This was back in November, and I looked some more interesting things about Hakluyt. Hakluyt, founded in the 1990s by none other than Fitzroy McLean, the legendary British agent. This is a guy who, according to some versions, he's the model for James Bond. Say some. He's certainly part of a candidate to be part of the composite that is James Bond. It was founded in 1995. Fitzroy McLean was part of it until his death in 1997. The personnel are heavily recruited from MI6, the Secret Intelligence Service, what James Bond worked for. It's a paradise for MI6 old boys. And then we look on the board. Right? The board of directors, I guess, of Hakluyt has included in the recent past Lord Jellicoe. Now, when you see a name like this, of course, Lord Jellicoe means that this is the son of the admiral who, in my view, lost the Battle of Jutland in May of 1916. Right? We're coming up to an anniversary for that. Right? The only fleet action of the German battle fleet and the British battle fleet in World War I was Lord Jellicoe was the head of the British Grand Fleet, and of course didn't fare so well. This is one where Admiral Beatty, his subordinate, made the famous remark, "What's wrong with our bloody ships today?" as 4 of his most modern battle cruisers blew up. Then we look at the Hakluyt Foundation. Hey, who do we find here? Frank Wisner, the top State Department and Defense Department official, who is essentially the stepfather or psychological father of Nicolas Sarkozy. Wisner, of course, the son of Frank Wisner Sr., top CIA operations man who apparently went crazy after the Hungarian revolt in 1956 and ended up killing himself in 1965. So that's Hakluyt. So the presence of Hakluyt, it seems to me, is extremely important, and this is something that people should look into. And let me not hesitate to issue an appeal to people, especially in China, who may get this program. Right? We need more information. In particular, what we need to know is what is the attitude of average Chinese, of different social groupings and education levels, whatever. What do they think of this Bo Xilai and Haywood scandal? And do they see the role of Hakluyt? Do they see a role of Huntsman? Because these are intelligence operations. We'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Keep up with everything at tarpley.net, and from minute to minute, hour to hour, Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed. Thanks to the well-wishers of my C-SPAN appearance in the past week. You can get that at the C-SPAN archive. You can, I think they want 99 cents to buy it. The more interest in that, the more possibility it might be rebroadcast. That's one side of it, and then the Coast to Coast AM appearance, that you have to go to Coast AM and be part of their Coast Insider to hear that if you happen to miss it. Again, if you'd had looking at the Twitter feed, you would have been able to decide whether you wanted to stay up from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Eastern Time in the night between Wednesday and Thursday. The bottom line, of course, buy my books. 9/11 Synthetic Terror, the 5th edition, 46 drills, exercises, and Angel is Next. What all the Brand X 9/11 books simply ignore. The main political evidence systematically ignored. So those are things to consider. Now, Afghanistan. Obama's trip to Afghanistan. If I don't miss my guess, the last time Obama went to Afghanistan, he had to rush over there to prevent Karzai from going totally off the reservation, right? Karzai was taking trips to Beijing, to Moscow, to Tehran, setting up an independent foreign policy for Afghanistan that was in total contradiction to the lunatic line of the State Department. So Obama had to rush over there. I think it's about 2 years ago. To tell Karzai, right, get back on the reservation, you, right? You're a puppet, and don't forget it. So Obama goes now, and he's got the two-step, right? He's a maximum deception, as always with Obama. On the one side, he says the war will soon be over. 2013, combat role ends. 2014, most troops out, but for the warmongers, there's still hope, because the U.S. is now committed, according to Obama, to staying in Afghanistan for 10 more years, 2014 to 2024. Now, I would say this is a pretty much open indication. Obama will be implementing the Divine Plan, D-E-V-I-N-E, Divine Plan, from the CIA, completely utopian, completely based on forms of terrorism, bombing by airplanes, bombing and assassinations by drones, quick raids by special forces, but above all, the expertise of these people, of the Joint Special Operations Command, playing one group against another, gang, counter-gang, the Kitsonian approach to warfare, right? Get the Pashtuns to kill the Northern Alliance, get the Pashtuns to kill the Pakistanis, and get them all to keep everybody else out. China out, Russia out, Iran out, everybody out if possible. So that's the future of Afghanistan. I don't see how this can be maintained. But again, the peace movement here in the United States is completely sold out, and there's no particular hue and cry. However, there is some hope. If we look at Occupy, the May 1st demonstration, now, this is not really Occupy. It's much broader than Occupy. As a matter of fact, very expert eyewitness observers of this have assured me that Occupy was the least of it. The May 1st demonstration happens in New York every year. Occupy did not invent it. It's been going on. There's been a May Day demonstration in New York City since time immemorial. And of the groups that came out this year, we're told the main group was labor, unions, blue collar, real people. The anti-war movement was out with significant anti-Obama animus, partly as a result of this Obama's Walpurgisnacht trip to Afghanistan or whatever that was, and Occupy. So there's some Occupy, but Occupy is the weakest of the three components. We're told that 35,000 people showed up, which is a good turnout. That's good. But what we need is programmatic maturity, leadership, organization, program, and a strategy. The things that you have to do to make something work in the real world, not the anarchist nostrum, oh, we get to have a hippie commune in the park, we're going to have our utopian conceptions of life, right? Instead of getting some yurts in the wilderness, we're going to do it in a park. This is a failure. This has already failed. I doubt whether that can be tried again. It's such a failure. But we have the wrecker, David Graeber, the pseudo-anthropologist or anthropologist, appearing on Russia Today, talking about the sweeping plans, but secret plans of Occupy. The anarchist Graeber typifies what must be dumped. No more anarchist leadership. The fact that Occupy is now a minority compared to labor, compared to anti-war, and especially compared to both of them put together. The entire dismal straitjacket of Occupy must be dumped. No more facilitators. No more consensus method. Majority rules, rights of the minority reasonably protected, but no more consensus model, no more 90% filibuster majorities, and no more creepy facilitators there. Right? Let the people decide, not the facilitators. So get rid of ad busters, get rid of the Grabers, the anthropologists, and others who want to make you into ethnographic material. Now, a lot of economic news. The Depression is getting worse. Britain is now officially in double dip. These terms, of course, are idiotic, but within the context of depression, where we've been since 2007, 2008, the British have now taken a sickening downward lurch, as has Spain. Spain looks like we're about 25% of the labor force unemployed. Officially, they say it's going to contract by just a little bit less than 2%. So there's a contraction of production and economic activity going on in the Eurozone, and April was the cruelest month. Spain has also been attacked again by Standard & Poor's, downgraded 2 notches from A+ to BBB+. The news this morning again being the 4th of May, 2012, the job creation in the U.S., if that's the word, is about 115,000 jobs. This is decreasing now from month to month. The official unemployment, 12.5 million out of work. That is a gross underestimate. My continuing rule of thumb, 30 million jobs would be needed to get to a first approximation of full employment, and that would still leave tens of millions of more people who might want to re-enter the labor force if conditions were more attractive. So make it 30 million new productive jobs at union wages. Even Dylan Ratigan continues with his campaign on this topic. 30 million new jobs. As it is under Obama, labor force shrinking, minus 242,000 in the past month. Lowest since 1981. That was the Carter-Reagan recession depression caused by Volckerism. U.S. unemployment now 8.1%. Question for the U.S. is, what's the story on suicides? Have we had suicides? We've had a number of suicides in Italy. We had one guy this week who essentially barricaded himself in an office with some firearms, and we've had the Greek suicide. So Southern Europe, we're seeing suicides. I wonder how many suicides in the United States. The answer is undoubtedly more than you think. So in terms of economics, I think that's this is important. Now, as a result of this thickening downward lurch, the whole question of austerity is now back on the front burner. We'll get to that in the next segment on World Crisis Radio.